Hi folks, and welcome to another video about DUNGEONFOG. My name is Till, and in today's map corner I'm going to pick up where we left in our last video and continue with my own approach on the Merchant Prince Palace that I was designing for, that I'm still designing for the home game of my Tomb of Annihilations game that we're going to play soon. So in our last video, I showed you how I created those rounded staircases. And in this video today, I want to talk about the rest or parts of the palace, and especially about the garden areas. When I was doing the concept for my palace, I knew that I wanted to have the Merchant Prince places where he can show off his power, where he can show off his wealth. And I think in the cultural or social environment of the of this jungle area, something where you can show off how powerful you are is by taming the jungle, basically. So there were like three core elements that I tried to condense into those garden areas. The jungle feeling, that you have still those tribal approaches to the jungle and that you have a jungle inside the palace. B, that me as the Merchant Prince, I am such a powerful being that I can even tame the jungle and make it behave as my servant, as my decoration to my palace. And C, I wanted to give the nature that grows in the gardens a counterpart where it looks like it's still controlled, but never really tameable. So it should have something of a wild and an uncontrollable approach, growing and expanding, and being a constant struggle between cutting back the plants and they're still trying to get free. So that's basically, those were the ideas that were circling my head when I thought about those areas here, those gardens. And there is another thing that was important to me is the palace is built upon the ancient ruins of the Merchant Prince ancestors. So I always tried to keep that in mind and place some relics, some old ruins somewhere on the map so that they are still there as a reminder and as a visual enhancement to the map, showing that these aren't just straight walls, but they merge into old ruins. So the palace is built and is merged together with the ancient ruins of the old palace that stood there. All right, to show you the techniques I used to create my gardens, we will focus on this area here, and I have a little time-lapse prepared that I will walk you through, and we can have a look at the steps that I used to create this area here in the little video section I'm going to switch to. So when I started with this garden, the first thing I did was I created the objects that are in this room, because it's still a room. I created the bridge. To do so, I scaled down my grid and started to draw the bridge. I needed to adjust the colors so that it fits the archway, the floor texture of the archway. And I wasn't really happy with the transition from the archway into the garden. Like it was too strongly cut off. So I tried to find a way to ease up that transition, and I started to create some decoration elements like this here. But it turned out to be too clunky for me, so I was starting to experiment with different approaches to that. So having those straight lines was not, it was just looking not as good as I liked it, so I tried something different. And as it often happens when you start to play around with things and experiment, you realize that a combination of two things might look even better. And this is how this turned out in the end, because I accidentally made both approaches visible, and then I liked them in combination better, and so I sticked with it. Right. Now, having a bridge means that it's above ground, it's higher than the rest of the garden here, so I needed some stairs. So I was adding stairs here, and as you see, I needed to rearrange them in my layers list so that the sorting order fits the visual approach. So now we have this bridge, and we have the stairs leading downwards. We have the archway, which gives us an entry to this pond area here. So the next thing I needed to draw was the pond. And again, by rescaling my grid, I was able to create smaller spaces to have a nicely fitting pond area here. Like we have this walkway around the water area, which I'm drawing right now. And by setting the inner shape to setting the outline to inner outline, and applying a water texture, I now have a nicely looking pond here, and I created my prop folders so I could group my things. I could group my bridge, and I could group my stairs and my pond, and by doing so I was able to rearrange them, and now I have all my, let's call them architectural objects on this map, on this room. So what's left is to start decorating or drawing the brushes and the textures. I usually increase the texture size because I'm just old and blind and I need to have them bigger to see them, or just probably because I like to have the elements on the textures almost as in a size of a prop, so that they look better. Then what I usually do is I start with a brush that fits almost the color of the floor texture. So having a brush, in that case, with this dried, cracked mud texture, and adjusting the color to fit the background floor texture gives me a nice way to create additional depth or additional flavor to the room. Then I add several different brushes with lighter colors, and what I'm doing here now, you're going to see that in a minute, is to draw the ground floor, like the pathway that's leading here. I turn this color darker because I generally like it better when the textures go from dark to light than back to dark. That's something that's just a personal taste of mine, but I think it looks good. So once I started to place my props, I already had in mind that those props are going to cast shadows. So I applied one prop, and then I adjusted all the light settings to it and started to duplicate it. So now all those duplicated props already have the proper light settings applied. And over the course of the next minutes, I was playing around. I was toying around with several placements. How could those bushes sit there? How could they look? How is the general garden layout? And I was starting to like the idea of having those decorational bushes here on the top and on the bottom of the pond. So I was rearranging a bit here. And I also thought that it might need, even this part of the garden might need a hint of this, what I've been talking about, this ancient ruin style and the jungle style. So I started to add more jungle props here, more jungle plants, like those palm trees, to give this garden a bit of a wild feeling, wild growing feeling. Now, when you're trying to do nature, having a lot of small details often helps, because nature is chaos, nature is uncontrolled, and a wild growing garden needs a lot of small details here and there to just communicate that feeling. I also wanted to have those, let's call them tribal statues here, because I wanted to remind my players that this is built on the ruins of the old palace, and to enhance them a bit, I was just playing around with columns and using them as additional decoration. I still wasn't sure if this is a pond where a decorational column could fit in the water, or if this could be a swimming pool. And to be honest, I will most likely decide that on the fly when my players enter this area, because I still don't know how to approach that. To address this nature overcomes humanity idea, I wanted to give more wild growing details, so I added those roots and those vines. And now it looks like this is a well-kept garden, but still has nature wildly growing and expanding. So the last thing I wanted to do is I wanted to add my daylight, my sunlight, and I just picked a light source and started to adjust it in a way that it's imitating sunlight. So I placed it in the center of my room and increased the range of the light. And as you see, I picked the wrong prop here. So this needs the right shadow. Here you go. And this one was too close to my light source. So when a light source is too close to a prop, this prop doesn't cast the proper shadow. You have to have a little distance between the prop, or the bounding box of that prop, and the bounding box of the light source. So I had to shift that a bit, and there you go. And now I was just toying around with the right angle for this palm tree, because I wanted to have this, I wanted to use the light cone to enhance the story of this pathway from the archway to the kitchen door, and I wanted to have my light cone fit that idea. All right, so that's my garden. That's my pond garden. And again, this was the important part for me. Having those columns, having the light shine through, having those shadows cast, will have a very majestic and very interesting impression on my players. At least that's what I hope for. And I did exactly the same with my other garden areas. So when you look at this garden here, you have those benches where you can sit. We have again this tribal columns that could be part of the ancient or could be ancient ruin, could be part of the just general decoration. We have those hints about those ancient ruins here. And we again also have this wild growing nature beats architecture, nature beats humans theme that I tried to continue here. This one is important because I think I talked about it in the past video. I wanted to give my players an approach to enter the palace without going through the front gates. So maybe this is something where they climb over the walls. And when you look closer, you see that I again have been working with several different brushes here. So I still have the same base texture as I had with my pond garden. And then I started to add different like grass textures, and I think it was again 2 different greens before the brown to lay out this walkway. And I specifically picked this cracked dirt as a walkway because I still want to remind my players, or just keep it in the general theme of my campaign, that this is an area where water is important and heat is a thing. So this is like what I did with this garden here. For the upper garden, let's start where you can enter it. The upper garden has more of an background narrative approach because I want to give the upper garden, I want to give that one the emphasis on the ruins. So the idea here is that this garden is still containing the most of the ancient ruins, and is something of a private garden for the merchant prince, where he comes and rests and reflects his history, or the history of his family. So this is his private area, and the private area is heavily focused on the ruins, but still picks up this wild growing jungle theme and the attempt to keep the garden in a clean state. And yeah, and there you go. So those were my maps, those were my garden areas. And when you look at the complete map, as we do right now, you just get the understanding that nature, jungle, ruins is still an important part of the story, of the narrative of this map. But you have other important things, like again this walkway towards the audience room that kind of carries the centerpiece of the map. So this was my take on the Merchant Prince Palace of Tomb of Annihilations. I learned a lot about how to incorporate your architectural structure into your narrative, and how to incorporate this wild growing, untamed nature thing into my gardens. I like this map a lot. I'm pretty sure my players will just walk along, turn around and ignore it completely. But I hope you had fun watching, and if you want more of those videos, or if you have any questions, just leave your comments in the section below, and I will do my best to answer them. That's all, folks. Thanks for watching, and happy map making.